want to go there.
Well, tell me a little bit about, I've got a picture of the bridge in front of me, and tell me a little bit about why they built Covered Bridge here in the first place. What is it about covered bridges?
Well,
why should we care to preserve it?
Okay. Well, I believe this one in particular, because it is so long, it's quite unusual in terms of its length. The reason covered bridges were built, I believe, and I'm not an expert on this part of it, but it was because typically in those days things were built of wood and cast iron, and cast iron didn't weather real well necessarily, and so it was a protection. It was just to maintain that element, and also it let you span long distances because the wall was this long truss, and it was mostly, I believe, just a protection.
So it helped preserve the bridge itself.
Right.
It wasn't to keep the people dry who were going through it.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at it from an architectural or an engineering point of view, whereas, but you know, the issue is that you're driving into the rain, so then you go across the river, so why would you be dry there, you know? So I guess that's why my logic is that way.
And in Michigan, we had many covered bridges. Are we losing them over time, or?
Yes, we had quite a few of them. There were a lot of them in the Grand Rapids area, and none remain there in Grand Rapids. And I guess there were some fairly glorious ones that went across the river there between Grand Rapids and 131. And I haven't done a lot of research in that area. The research that we've conducted typically is to get a precedent of were there a certain style that Michigan bridges were built in. And so we went to the libraries and various things, did searches to find out, well, what did they typically look like in Michigan and so forth. And then we also did some research in upstate New York, because typically people that came to Michigan migrated from upstate New York, and they traveled across and so forth, and they brought a lot of their ideas with them. Like the Greek Revival style of building kind of came from upstate New York. And when we were doing research on this to see about appropriate materials, we looked at some bridges in that area just to see if, you know, what we could do. One of the things that's unusual to this bridge is it has this fishing slot cut in it. And it's an asymmetrical slice in the side that allows people to cast bait through the side of the bridge.
Just like a little window in the wall of the side of the bridge. Is it just on one side, or is it
just on one side? And it's only on one end of the bridge.
Would this have been put in originally in the 1866 period?
No.
Or was this added later?
Well, from what we can gather, we have photographs from the 1910 time when it was rebuilt. And the photographs that we have don't have the slot in it. And then we have some pictures in the 20s that have it in. And so it happened sometime in that era. We don't know exactly when. But then again, people just kind of love that because you can stand inside the bridge and look out. It let a little air through it, let a little light in, because a lot of the bridges got quite dark. And before this one was raised, the siding went all the way up to the top, so it was very dark in there. So raising it a little bit and then cutting the slot allowed a little more light and so forth, and allowed people to do it. Also, we know that neighborhood kids stand on the sill and jump off of it, and they climb on the roof and jump off too, which is kind of, you know, you hate to see that, but I mean, that's the way kids are.
Do people fish off of it today?
Apparently so. We didn't find any fishermen when we were doing our research. But it depends on the time of the year and everything else. But you know, we did, when I was doing research on the roof, we did find lures stuck on the roof that were, you know, and things, you know, you'd find some treble hooks kind of hooked in some place where they couldn't reach them, and they'd break their line. And so
but I mean, is there room for vehicles and fishermen at the same time?
It's a very tight squeeze. The width of this thing is 12 to 14 feet, and so when if you have a good-sized car going through there, you can do it, but the motorist has to be kind of careful. And I imagine, you know, younger folks that don't really worry about it so much. They say, oh, okay, they'll work around me or something. And, you know, like I said, we didn't see people fishing when we were doing the research, but obviously people and neighbors talked about it, and they said, well, I used to fish when I was a kid and all this stuff, so we know what happens.
So this bridge, one of the things that makes it unique is its length, and another is this fishing window. But with its being narrow, you can only get one car. I mean, you can only have traffic in one direction at a time. Are you able to, as you approach it, and I think I've crossed it a couple times, but it's been a while. You have to to let the traffic come out of it before you can enter.
That's
Can you
correct.
see all the way through it?
Yes, you can. It's a straight bridge, and there is a causeway on the side. It's a little wider, so there's actually and there's a little park at the headway of the causeway, so there's a turnaround spot. And one of the elements of this new work is to put a height restrictor on it, so we can't have semis going through it anymore and so forth. And we're going to put the height restrictor back by the turnaround, by the park, so that if you touch the little bump, then you know to go around instead of getting caught on the causeway, because turning around the causeway is kind of a trick.
I see. So this is a little way you would know ahead of time that you're not going to fit.
Right. Well, and the nice thing about it also is it keeps that kind of this big thing away from the historic bridge. And so on the other side of the bridge, though, it's right in an intersection. So we call it affectionately the head knocker. Will be right close to the intersection and kind of obscure the view of the bridge, which we're not real excited about, but we're trying to keep it simple and clean and maybe a dark color and maybe put a sign that'll kind of enhance the history to the people, letting them know when it was built and so forth. We'll try to do the best we can with that, but that's about the only way we can do it and keep the safety going.
As the architect, you've analyzed the bridge and helped determine what needs to be done to straighten it and to secure it. When is that work going to take place, or is that ongoing?
Well, the work will take place next September. There's a certain date because we're actually going to do work on the Sturgis Dam. When they are going to do the work, they'll draw the river down 4 to 6 feet, which allows us to work under it. Right now it's only 2 feet below the bottom of the piece. So between St. Joe Road Commission and the Sturgis engineering group, they determined after the Labor Day weekend is the time when that should happen, because then the traffic flow is lower and a lot of activities don't happen in that time of year. So we have this little window to work between then and when it snows, because we're going to strip a lot of the paint off the elements, and we have to paint it on. It's got to bond well, so we got to do it in warmer weather. So this is going to be a real flurry. The river's going to be drawn down. They're going to install heavy-duty scaffolding, and we're going to build a cocoon around the bridge, because this is lead-based paint, and we can't have it fall in the river. And so this whole process is going to be this real flurry from September to the end of November on 2008.
That's a big project.
It is.
Has the bridge, is the exterior painted now? I mean, is painting ongoing? Does it need to be repainted every couple of years?
It does need to be repainted every so often. I'm not sure when the last painting was. If the paint is done with good quality and applied properly and prepared properly, it lasts a pretty good amount of time. The concern with the bridges is there's a lot of moisture coming off the wheels inside the bridge, and so it gets a little warmer, it drives paint right off. So it's one of those things that what happens in this case, because of the lead content on the siding and the shape of it, the bottom of it is all rotted off in many places, and the tongue and grooves and various things have kind of worn away. We're actually going to replace it with the same species of wood and use an environmentally friendly paint. So this whole cocooning process, we're going to remove the siding, and it isn't the original siding anyway. It was removed in the 50s and totally redone. So what we're going to do is have it milled in a shiplap form, which means there's a little notch on one side and the other side laps over it. It'll still appear like it's a regular, just a board siding, but it'll again allow moisture to stay on the outside. It'll keep the moisture away from the structural elements. So we're, from the historic photographs, we determined the size of the boards, and so when the shiplap is milled, it'll look the same, but it'll be better protected.
So you've got to replace some rotten boarding. You've got to paint, and then you've got to untwist it a little. How do you do that?
Well, it takes a specialized contractor, a bridge builder, to come in and do these kind of things. They'll erect the scaffolding. First off, will be used to hang the cocoon and allow people to do the lead removal and do that kind of work, stabilize the steel frame, and then what will happen is that same scaffolding will be used as a structural jacking source. And so there are a few bridge builders that typically are able to do this kind of hardcore work, and they raise this scaffolding up so that everything is dead level. And then what happens is we're going to replace the steel rods and new bolts and so forth with the same size and shape as it was before. And what they do is they set everything down on that flat surface, and they tighten up all the bolts to a certain pressure in it, and so that it stabilizes in its straightened position. So when they're done, they'll remove the scaffolding and everything will be square.